TGCRequiem here. We are playing some Modern Dredge. I did a poll on Twitter, so those who follow sometimes get to vote for what I play from week to week, and I had a vote basically with Dredge, Esper, Goryo's Vengeance, Black-Green, Mid-Range, and Fairies, and Dredge won. So I played a league with Dredge to get a little bit of a feel for it, and just straight got my rump whooped. Deck is a little more complex than it looks from the outside, but and there's a lot of hate against it, but I think I can at least give you a good showing and kind of help you see what the deck's about. If hopefully I can play decently. So this seems like a decent hand. We have enablers. I think we're going to be able to Faithless Looting, pitch the Stinkweed Imp, and Dark Blast here. Hopefully we'll draw a land in that mix. If not, we'll have Faithless Looting and draw another land, or at least trigger Dredge the next turn. Alright, so actually in this case we're going to pitch Prized Amalgam and Stinkweed Imp on the hopes that we can hit off Stinkweed to get Prized Amalgam. At some point we might have to try and draw a land, though. We may have to Faithless Looting next turn, actually, just to try and get it. I guess we can Faithless Looting it even after we Dredge, so we should be alright. Sequencing of this is a little bizarre. You gotta try and make sure you get your dredgers in the graveyard. You also want your recursive elements in the graveyard, but you need something like Narcomoeba or Bloodghast to come out of the graveyard to trigger your amalgams. You need land to be able to, trigger your Bloodghast. So it's kind of bizarre. You usually just need 2 land to really get the whole thing going. This Faithless Looting could be a problem if they take that. I mean, we still could just get lucky and set up a pretty nasty Dredge engine off the Stinkweed Imp, but yeah, it's a little painful. I mean, at this point I'm assuming we're probably playing against Grixis Shadow. So maybe we're okay to just hope we draw a land here instead of dredging. Yeah, that's awesome. So here we're going to be set up pretty great because we can go Cathartic Reunion. We're going to discard the Dark Blast as a secondary dredger. And then I think we're probably just going to discard Narcomoeba here. We're not really going to cast it very likely. We're going to dredge our biggest dredger first. We're going to get the land back. And Dark Blast. Oh man, talk about a whiff of a Dredge. So we didn't really hit anything very well there, but on the plus side, we will hopefully get a chance to Cathartic Reunion again next turn, or possibly Faithless Looting the turn after that when we cast Stack More Salvage. We also have the ability to Dark Blast if our opponent plays a creature, which will give us a Dredge. And, we've got so many cards in the graveyard now that there's a good chance that we... Okay, so we're actually playing some sort of Esper deck. Is this... Oh, okay. Esper... Esper Shadow, it looks like. Opponent's not dredging, but delving for a Tasigur. So we don't actually have any dredgers here, and because we have no dredgers here, it just automatically draws for us, but we're kind of set up with another great draw here. What we're going to be able to do, Cathartic Reunion, pitching Stinkweed Imp and Bloodghast, and then that, playing the land for turn, is going to trigger Bloodghast to come back, which will trigger Prized Amalgam. Plus we still will get whatever we hit off of our Stinkweed Imp, dredging, etc. So first draw, we're going to hit Stinkweed. Hits an Archamoeba, that's great. Looks like that's the only one we hit, so we drew 2 other cards, another Bloodghast and Stinkweed Imp. And we still haven't hit like a Life from the Loam to be able to basically pour lands back into our hand for Conflagrate, though we will have access to a couple Conflagrates here. The first one's going to hit for at least 4, we would think. Opponent's likely running Path, which is a little troublesome because it shuts down the recursive element. No real good Thoughtseize here. They may have to actually just take Narcomoeba just to avoid helping us. If they discard Stinkweed or Dark Blast, that just turns on our dredging. Discarding Bloodghast just... we also do have access, I guess, to Faithless Looting, so... yeah, so Narcomoeba's the choice here. Presumably the opponent's going to attack with Tasigur here. We may need to chump, although it may just be worth going for our chip damage to try and turn on a Conflagrate for the win. So I don't know if the opponent necessarily wanted to do that there. Yeah, so I think we just Faithless Looting here. Probably just attack with Narcomoeba, maybe Bloodghast if we hit a land. Okay, so Life from the Loam's pretty good. But I think we're really just going, well, Prized Amalgam. Alright, let's think about this. So, if we put Stinkweed, we only really need 1 dredging next turn. I think we actually, so we really want, we could Life from the Loam. Again, we want to be able to throw that Conflagrate. The opponent's probably going to sit on a Stubborn Denial. We do have 2 of them. If we cast Stubborn Denial, we can get the Bloodghast to return, which will cause the Prized Amalgams to return. I think we just want to go for max value here with Stinkweed Imps and Prized Amalgam. No real reason to attack with Bloodghast here. It can't block, but we're not getting through, and we don't have a way to necessarily recur it. We don't want to make their Death Shadow so big that they can lethal us out next turn. If our opponent for some reason taps out completely, then we can I don't know. Let's see, if they tap out, then we can just kind of go for the Conflagrate possibly. Keep in mind I don't have a ton of experience. I played the deck a little bit, but far from an expert on this one. Interesting, so the opponent's still not attacking. Okay, so Haunted Dead's great, so we can basically get 3 power on the battlefield, including a 1/1 flyer, uncounterable, while getting Dredgers back in the graveyard. I kind of feel like that's what we want to do. If we try and cast Life from the Loam, they could just counter it. Plus Haunted Dead's going to trigger Prized Amalgam, which is going to put another 3 power on the battlefield. Based on where the game state is, I think that's where we're looking right now. Just keep trying to chip in for 1 here. And again, we'll plan to discard Stinkweed Imp and Bloodghast, hope to Life from the Loam on our turn, or Conflagrate depending. Okay, Lingering Soul's not unexpected here. Okay, so now we can just Conflagrate for the win pretty easily. Right, we just gonna dredge a card back to hand, throw 6 damage. Guess it depends on how they attack. And this is a free block because we're going to return Prized Amalgam with Haunted Dead. We're going to be able to kill one of the spirits with a Dark Blast. Just not quite sure if we're going to get enough to Conflagrate. One thing I will note is normally I don't have a stop on my opponent's main phase, but I do feel like it is necessary here. Because you want these Prized Amalgams to return untapped on your turn, which means you need to do it before your opponent's end step. So by doing it before the opponent's end step, when we get to the next end step, the Amalgams will in fact return. And I think we should have enough power on board here to finish the opponent out. Think, is there a mountain, access to a mountain? Yeah. So we're just actually going to dredge the Life from the Loam here. That's going to get us another Bloodghast onto the battlefield. We're going to be able to grab a Stomping Ground, a mountain, and doesn't really matter. Oops, yeah, that's right. So what this does for us, this allows us to play a mountain. That's going to return the Bloodghast, and then if they had anything left at that point, we would still have access to Conflagrate to get the rest of lethal through. As it is, we're attacking for like 14 points of damage and they can only block maybe 6 of it, which means 8's getting through. Alright, that's game 1. Alright, sideboarding, you just got to be a little careful what you're playing against. Conflict Rate's interesting, so a lot of times with Conflict Rate, you know, and I haven't played the deck a lot, but it is a deck that we have had in our playtesting group, if you will, as a proxy deck. Just for like the gauntlet, and so I do have some notes on sideboarding with it. That way we just kind of get a little better practice, and you know, you typically would remove 2 when you're playing against like big creatures, but this also does give you some reach against your opponent, and so it's possible we end up keeping this in. I think we definitely absolutely want the Abrupt Decays. I'm assuming the opponents probably, they want Flashback, I'm sure, so they're probably not playing Grafdigger's Cage, which means they're probably on like Nihil Spellbomb as their graveyard hate. So it's possible we want to bring an Ancient Grudge, but I don't know that I want to bring more than one if we're also bringing in the Abrupt Decays. I think we can more just try to play through that. Leyline of the Void might be decent against them. I have to think about that. Actually, it's going to make it really hard for them to cast Tassigers or Lingering Souls, things like that. Actually, I think that's pretty good. No Snapcaster value. So I think at this point, if we're talking about maybe these 7 cards, Collective Brutality is not particularly great in the matchup. Cathartic Reunion could be a bit of a blowout. I'm going to cut one of those. Bit of a blowout in the, you know, to get stubborn denial. So it's still really powerful, but I don't know that it's something we definitely want to jam into a stubborn denial. Means we've got 2 more cards to cut. I think we do cut 1 Conflagrate, just because we still could get some reach out of that for, you know, kind of like an out of nowhere victory. And then beyond that, yeah, I mean, I don't know that we need 4 Leyline, but if you're going to bring them in, you might as well bring them in. I think their deck, Esper, is going to be a little more dependent on the graveyard than, you know, many of the Shadow decks, and they're all pretty dependent on the graveyard. And I think I'm just going to cut a deck more salvage as well. Now it's possible we want 2 Ancient Grudge and only 1 Abrupt Decay, since the Abrupt Decays are only going to get the, what do you call it? Oh, this is actually a pretty decent hand here. Since the Abrupt Decays are only going to kill Death Shadow, really. I actually think we're going to keep here, especially in the draw. Double Leyline. We'd prefer to have only 1, but if they don't have a hand disruption on turn 1, that Faithless Looting is going to be great. And even if they do, you know, we may get a little lucky and draw out of it some. So, assuming our opponent doesn't have any graveyard hate on us, we're actually in really good shape here because we're going to be able to discard Bloodghast. We're going to be able to dredge, discard Bloodghast with Faithless Looting, play a land which will return Bloodghast and Prized Amalgam to battlefield if the dredge doesn't do that on its own. Got excited that my opponent maybe missed a land drop there for a second. Snapcaster for value. Oh man, double amalgam, that's great. Well, we're going to draw two. I think we do take the Life from the Loam as one of the draws. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and just keep drawing here. Discard the Bloodghast and a Stinkweed. The question here is if we want to have the Bloodghast come down now, and I think since we already have the amalgams, we're going to say no, and that allows, if our opponent ends up being able to kill the amalgams, again, we can crack the Arid Mesa, returning the Bloodghast right before our opponent's end step, which would then return the amalgams back to the battlefield again, which is where that power of being able to just kind of churn over and over comes from. We'll get a mountain, but we're not going to trigger these Bloodghast here. No, we'll do it at this point. Looking to get some green, and that way we can Life from the Loam. I'm only going to bring one of the Bloodghast back, I think, at this point. That way we have the way to trigger any other amalgams that come in. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's the line I'm taking. Alright, now we have a Conflagrate as well, so we'll be able to throw some damage at our opponent fairly soon. Opponent, if they try and stubborn, they either have to use 2 stubborn denials to counter a Life from the Loam here, or we can just pay through the first one. Of course, they think they're going to get some value there, but we're going to play another land here, returning the Bloodghasts again. But again, we have a fetch land, so we're going to do it on end step. We can do one on end step and then maybe play a land on our turn after we dredge with Stinkweed Imp. Or Life from the Loam, really. Alright, so now there's a possibility they can Stubborn Denial. Got some power on board. And since they have haste again, there's no reason to have to do both of these right here. So Gemstone Mine, we can actually cast Narcomoeba. Let's think about this. If we attack, you know, they're going to chump a couple. We're going to get a point of damage. We'll be able to throw 6. I mean, we want to leave at least 3 blockers back. Can also just cast a Stinkweed Imp if we wanted to. We could just start by recasting a Faithless Looting, which would get us Dredge on Stinkweed and Life from the Loam. And that might be worth it. The concern that the opponent has Stubborn Denial could make the Conflagrate a blowout, and I think we can win without it. You know, the other path we can go is cast a Stinkweed Imp, Gemstone Mine, and an Narcomoeba. Stinkweed Imp makes attacking difficult for the opponent. We're going to bring all the blood gas in at this point. I think we just have enough power on board. I don't think our opponent's really set up well with sweepers. And we have lands next turn, so we can just keep attacking with the blood ghasts. So I think we attack with everything except for the Amalgam. That way we have at least 3 blockers. We're going to get, you know, 3 points of damage in here. They block. We're going to get those creatures back with haste next turn. Of course, the opponent, you know, if they have enough removal to poke everything through, that's a possibility. Yeah, so they're a little afraid to attack into the shadow. I think we're just going to keep cycling Stinkweeds onto the battlefield at this point, though. So now we do have 2 Conflagrates. Now that we have 2 Conflagrates, we might be able to just go for the win over the next 2 turns. And again, I think we want to attack with all 3 of these. One of those, the opponent has 2 pieces of removal in hand. If we attack with everything and they have 2 removal spells, they block here, here, here. They take 1 point of damage, but if they have 2 removal spells, they're dead. Are they dead? I guess we could cast Life from the Loam and then throw. Yeah, I think we actually attack with everything here. So they block here. They're going to take up 5 points of damage if they don't have removal. So now 3. And then we have 2 Conflagrates we can throw. have one Stubborn Denial, but they can't have two. Looks like that was lethal. Alright, and we got the match. Awesome. So, again, I don't play the deck a lot, so I apologize if I'm a little slow, but hopefully it helps you learn a little something. It's good for me as well, because I play on the other side of this matchup, you know, somewhat frequently, and so getting a better understanding of how the opponent's deck works and where they might be pigeonholed or stuck is good. So, Ley Lines, I feel like probably did some work, but you know, I guess based on their draws, it wasn't like huge or anything. But still, fun match. Alright, we'll see you next time. On the left, there's a link to the next video in the league. In the center, if you want to subscribe, and on the right to more Dredge matchups, the playlist if I end up playing more than one league with this. Have a good night.